Okay, so let's just jump right in. In February of 2026, the White House drops this absolute bombshell. I mean, it sends shockwaves literally around the world. They ordered the release of every single government file on aliens and UFOs. Now, the big question is, was this the moment of truth that people have been waiting for decades, or was it one of the most clever, most sophisticated political distractions we've ever seen? All right, let's break this all down.
And it all kicked off with this, a directive posted right on social media. I mean, can you believe it? With just a few words, a topic that was always kind of pushed to the fringe, the realm of conspiracy theories, it was suddenly front and center. We're talking the very heart of presidential power, promising to unlock secrets that have been kept under wraps for decades.
For decades, the official government line on these things, what they now call UAPs or unidentified anomalous phenomena, it was always just a mix of, nope, not real, and look over there, just denial and dismissal. So this directive, wow, it was a complete 180, a massive, historic pivot towards transparency that, honestly, nobody saw coming.
So, on the surface, what did this mean?
Well, it was totally clear and absolutely unprecedented. The president himself issued a command to open the books on what might be one of the most tightly held secrets in government history. And get this, the directive specifically pointed to the Secretary of War. That's a new, pretty controversial title for the head of the Defense Department to lead the whole effort.
So, you have to ask, right? What on earth prompted such a drastic move? Well, the official story, the reason they gave to the public, it all points to this one viral moment. A moment sparked by just a single, almost off-the-cuff comment from a former president. And this is where you really get some whiplash. So former President Obama is on a podcast, right? They're doing one of those quick lightning round question things. And someone asks if aliens are real. His answer? 2 words. They're real. Boom, the internet just explodes. But then, almost immediately, he posts this clarification, kind of walking it back, talking about, the statistical probability in a vast universe, a much more cautious scientific take.
Well, the Trump administration saw that first comment and they just pounced on it. They didn't frame it as some fun, casual podcast moment. Oh no, they framed it as a serious national security issue. The accusation was basically that a former president had just spilled classified information, which of course set the stage perfectly for their own dramatic response.
Okay, and here's where the story takes a really sharp turn. Because while the entire media world was chasing flying saucers, a lot of political analysts started pointing to a much more down-to-earth crisis. They started arguing that this whole alien announcement, it wasn't really about disclosure. It was the cover for the real story.
And this really is the key question, isn't it? If you want to understand the why behind this whole UAP directive, you can't just look up at the sky. You have to look at the political firestorm the administration was dealing with at that exact moment.
Yeah, this timeline really puts it all into perspective. Look at this. Just 8 days before the alien directive, the Attorney General is getting absolutely grilled by Congress. We're talking 5 brutal hours over this huge political scandal. Then, a few days later, boom, Obama's comment drops, providing the perfect opportunity. And just 4 days after that, the White House completely changes the subject for the entire country.
So what was this big scandal? It was all about the Jeffrey Epstein files. The Department of Justice had just released this massive data dump. I mean, a staggering 3 million pages of documents. But here's the thing. Instead of putting the controversy to bed, the huge volume of it, and maybe more importantly what everyone suspected was missing, it just threw gasoline on the fire.
So why was it such a firestorm? Because lawmakers, and we're talking from both sides of the aisle, they immediately started accusing the administration of a massive cover-up. They were claiming that as much as half of the files were being deliberately held back. And the documents they did release? So heavily blacked out, so redacted that they were basically useless. Man, the pressure on the administration was just immense. During that hearing on February 11th, you had Republican Congressman Thomas Massie, who actually co-sponsored the bill that forced the release in the first place. He looked the Attorney General right in the eye and accused her of orchestrating a cover-up that was bigger than Watergate. I mean, that's a huge accusation.
Okay, so let's put it together. The administration has a massive political crisis on its hands, and they need a distraction, a really powerful one. But why aliens? Why UAPs? Well, to get why this was the perfect subject, we've got to look at the history. See, this wasn't some topic they just pulled out of thin air. It was built on nearly 80 years of the government officially dealing with this stuff.
It really all started right after World War II. The Air Force kicked off a whole series of studies.
First, you had Project Sign, which actually took the extraterrestrial idea pretty seriously. Then came Project Grudge, which was basically designed to do the opposite, to debunk sightings. And finally, you get the most famous one, Project Blue Book, which really set the government's official skeptical, nothing-to-see-here tone for decades.
But here's the thing, all through this period of official denial, these really credible sightings just kept happening. Sightings that just defied any easy explanation. I mean, you've got a police sergeant in New Mexico seeing a craft on landing legs with two figures next to it. You've got a future president, Jimmy Carter, reporting a bizarre glowing object in Georgia. And then, much more recently, you have highly trained Navy pilots engaging with that tic-tac object that moved in ways our technology just can't explain.
So then you fast forward to the 2000s, and we learn about the secret Pentagon program called ATIP. And they weren't just collecting stories anymore, they were collecting hard data. And they identified what they call the 6 observables. These are characteristics that kept popping up over and over again in credible reports. And these things, they seem to just break the laws of physics as we know them. We're talking about incredible hypersonic speeds with no sonic boom, and the ability to move seamlessly from the air to space to deep underwater.
And look, this isn't just ancient history. Fast forward right up to today. The Pentagon has a new office for this, called ARO, and they are dealing with hundreds of new reports from military personnel every single year. Just look at their 2024 report. They logged over 750 cases, and out of all of those, 21 of them remain completely, totally unexplained.
So here's the really crucial point. All of this evidence, piling up year after year, it finally led Congress to act. You had bipartisan laws pass in 2024 and 2025 that basically forced the government's hand. They created a legal requirement for all UAP-related records to be gathered up by the National Archives. So, the plumbing for disclosure, it was already being built.
And that brings us right back around to the core argument of this whole analysis. The idea that, look, it almost doesn't matter if the disclosure is real or not. What matters is that this incredibly deep, cosmic mystery has now been turned into a powerful weapon in modern political fights.
Yeah, the source material actually has a name for this tactic. They call it the weaponization of anomalous phenomena. And the idea behind it is actually pretty simple, but it's also incredibly effective. You find a topic that is just so sensational, so fascinating, like aliens, that it basically becomes a black hole for media attention. It just sucks the entire news cycle into its orbit, and more importantly, pulls it away from a political crisis that's much more damaging. All right, so let's break down the main takeaways from all this. First, the timing. It really suggests that the UAP directive was a masterclass in distraction, pulling everyone's attention away from the Epstein files scandal. Second, the White House didn't really invent this. They just kind of hijacked a disclosure process that Congress had already put in motion, and then they slapped their own name on it. And finally, and this might be the biggest takeaway of all, the old guard, the defense and intelligence folks who kept this secret for so long, they've lost control of the narrative. This whole thing proves that the era of absolute secrecy on UAPs is over. It's just not politically or technologically possible anymore.
Which of course leaves us with the ultimate question. The files are coming out. We might actually be on the verge of learning some incredible truths about our place in the cosmos. But you still have to ask yourself, are we witnessing a genuine push for transparency, or are we just being masterfully distracted by the greatest mystery of all time? And you know what? The answer is probably both.